Hey guys, welcome back to this video series on the RestAssured tutorials. So today I'm going to talk about how you can put together a framework with your RestAssured API, right? So, until now we have been using the RestAssured DSL to write different tests, but as you notice, we have been repeating quite a lot of things in those tests, right? It's not quite of a reusable kind of way of writing your tests, right? So if you are working in a real-time project, you would like to put everything into a framework kind of thing so that your reusability increases, right? You don't have to repeat different statements, and everything will fall in place, right? So uh, instead of JUnit or TestNG, I'm going to use the Cucumber framework, right? So Cucumber, as you know, it's a very popular uh, framework, right? Where it gives you this English-like statements, right? You can write your tests in English-like statements where you will have the feature files, you will have the step definitions, and the test runner to kind of execute your different feature files, right? Which basically represent your specification or requirements. Okay, so if we want to learn more about Cucumber, I have given a link on the top of this video, or you can directly search it in my channel. Um, I have a complete tutorial on the Cucumber framework, right? So you can learn all the basics of Cucumber framework and how you can work out with them, right? So I would recommend to go through that tutorial once because I'll be using some of those concepts here in this video. Okay, so as I was talking about how we can convert this whole, test and put it into a framework kind of thing, right? So for that, if you notice, I put everything under one package, right? This test, I'm not going to delete them. But we have now a test runner, right? So this is the Cucumber JUnit test runner. Okay. So here we use the annotation at run with cucumber.class, and then we give some options, right? So where all features will be, what will be the plugins, basically for reporting, and that's our class. Okay, so that's the test runner class, which will kind of execute your Cucumber classes. And then as you see the features, this is the path which we have given. So we'll follow the same path here. So what I'm going to do is on the source test resources, I'm going to create another directory called features. So this will kind of hold all my feature files. Okay, so here I'm going to add a file and I'm going to call it API test.feature. Okay, so you can see a nice Cucumber logo here in this API test because it is a feature file. Okay, now what we'll do is in this package, I'm going to create another package which is called step defs, right? So this will contain all my step definitions, right? I'm not going to go into detail of what is step definition, how it relates to the Cucumber feature file, so that you can go through the Cucumber tutorials. Okay, so this step defs and this is the feature file and this is the test runner. So these are the three pillars, you can say, of a any Cucumber framework, right? You need these three things in order to kind of construct your Cucumber framework, be it anything. If you're working on Selenium or you're working with REST API, right? So now I'm going to write a simple feature file which will kind of represent a scenario or a test. Okay, so the first line would be the feature name. So I'm going to say test. Um, so I'm going to work with the GitHub API. So I will say test GitHub API, and there could be number of scenarios. So I would basically use scenario outline, and then I will say scenario is to kind of validate, or user is able to validate the GitHub API response. So very simple test, right? So we are going to look at now. I would say given and user sets the base API request with the URL. So I'm going to pass the URL here. So I'm going to make it a parameter, right? And then I'm going to say and user authenticates the API request with this token, API token, right? So let's make it token. So then I'm going to say when user sends the API request to get all the repositories, right? So this is our API request to get all the repositories in GitHub. And then the final statement is then user validates the API or response status as or is the code which will pass here, the status code, right? And finally, we'll have some examples because this is a scenario outline. So you need to provide some values for the parameters which we have defined. So our first parameter is URL, and then it's token, and then code. So these are the three parameters. Okay, so we are going to provide some values here. So this is how our feature file will look like. As you can see, it's pretty simple to understand what we are trying to do here. Each and every step is defined here, right? So given this and this, when we are trying to send a request, we are getting a response, and then we are validating that response status, right? So now the next step is to basically create the step definition, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select that step definitions package, and I'm going to create my step defs. Okay. Okay, here it is, right? And let me do it for all of these steps. So more actions, create all step defs. Okay, just a minute. Okay, so automatically all my step definitions are created. This was duplicated because we tried to create it earlier. So these are our step defs. Okay, now as you can see, it is all the step definitions. What it is basically the code behind our steps, right? So given when then steps, these are related or these are integrated with these methods, right? Where we'll write our actual code, which will basically perform this step, right? So that's the basic idea about the Cucumber framework, right? Okay, so let's get these examples values here. So let me go to a GitHub API test. So this is a token which I was using. We can use the same token here, right? And then basically this code could be 200, right? It's basically the status code. And then the URL. So let's take the URL here, which is GitHub api.github.com. Right, so that's the base URL, you can say. So as you can see, the reason behind doing this is, I mean, I can work with any particular URL, right? And I can work with any token. If I want to test it with different token, or if I want to test it with different status code, I can put any number of examples, and then we can put the number of iterations, right? We can increase the number of iterations. So this test could be executed number of times with these different values. So that's the advantage of kind of parameterizing your values rather than putting static values here, which you can also do it here, but I prefer it this way. Okay. So we'll see how we can execute this using our step definitions, which we are going to define right now. Okay. So before that, let me just reconstruct all these statements. Otherwise, it's not going to work, right? So let's put dollar here, and we are going to pass the URL here. Okay, similarly, I will do it for all the other state methods. So we are going to pass string token. This doesn't require anything, and this, and we are saying string code. Okay. Okay, so let's now write the actual code here, right? We are going to introduce, I'm going to introduce few new things in the RestAssured, right? So the first is the request specification. Okay. So request specification, right? So this is a kind of interface, right, which allows you to basically define all your specifications, which will construct your request API, right? So these specifications could be setting your base URL. So it has got some default methods which you can use in order to define how your request will look like, right? So we'll see that, but first we need to create this request specification, and let's create an object of this, right? And then the second thing would be the response class, right? So we'll create an object of this response class. So basically we can store whatever response we are getting from an API, we can store it in this object, okay? And then we can extract different things out of this response object. Okay, so we'll import the class here. Now we'll see we can use the rest assured class, right, to kind of define the base URI, right? We are passing the URL from the feature file, and basically what it will do is this base URI is now set for this rest assured class, right? So wherever you use the given method, it will automatically extract the base URI. It is already constructed. You don't need to define it again and again, right? So that's how you use it in a framework. Now, that's all that particular method is doing, basically setting the API request URL, the base URL. And then what we are going to do is we are going to construct our request, right? API request. So we'll be using given method. And then let me just import this, and given dot, what we are going to authenticate our API request, right? So we are going to use O2. We have done this earlier as well. We are going to pass the token. So now this method will make sure that your API request is validated or authenticated with the right token, right? So you don't need to now repeat this step every time. Whatever feature file you write, you just call this method and it will kind of validate your token API request, okay? And it will store it in this API request, which is nothing but the request specification, okay? Okay, now that's done. Now we are going to send the API request, right? Before that, we require the path, because we need to construct our request URI, right? So to get all the repositories from GitHub, the path is user/repos. I think we have already done this. And then response, here in this response object, we are going to store the request, right? So whatever response is coming from this request. So request dot get path, and then we are going to say then dot extract dot response. This is going to store the response in this response object. And finally, we are going to validate our assertion. So instead of string, this will be int because this is an integer type. And we'll say assert dot assert equals. And here we will say code and we'll get the response object and we'll get the status code here, right? So it will compare the status code. Okay, so let's change it to get status code instead of status code. Okay, so these are three methods which will basically complete your feature file, right? This is all the code behind your feature file steps, right? Which is stored in the step definitions. Now, these are pretty much reusable methods, right? You can call it in any feature file. If you have different scenarios, you can use it to run your different feature files. So that's how you make it reusable. Okay, so one last thing, as I can notice, if you see these kind of your feature steps are still highlighted, that means it is somehow not accepting that it has got the step definitions, right? So it is saying undefined step reference. That means it is not recognizing the step definitions methods which we have written. Okay, so for that, we need to change this to some regular expression, right? So because we are passing some variables here or parameters, we need to convert this into a regular expression. Dot star means it will accept any kind of value in this parameter. Okay. So now if I go into the feature file, you will see everything is resolved. So that means all the steps have the step definitions associated with them. So that's all about on how to construct this framework. Now let's go ahead and execute this feature file. Okay. Now there are two ways of executing it. Either I can execute it from here, or I can also execute it from the test runner file, because we have the features linked to the folder where we have all the feature files. Okay, so let's execute it from here because we can also see the results in HTML format. Okay, so it took some time to kind of compile and start running this test, but now it has started running, and you will see it will run as per your scenario, right? So whatever scenarios you have, it will start running those from a feature file. So as you can see, it has got the scenario outline, then it will execute each step, right? And then the step definition, basically the method which is written inside the step definition file, right? And it will give you this kind of logs. Okay, so this is a new feature which also I have told this regarding this in my other playlist, Cucumber playlist, right? So what you can do is you can include all these different properties, and through which you can basically create a report on the cloud which is provided by Cucumber, and you can share it with your teammates, right? So we are not going to do this right now. Anyways, I have got a generic Cucumber HTML report which is generated under this path which I have defined, right? And I can go ahead and open it with any browser. So it's a pretty simple report, nothing fancy about it. Obviously, we can build any fancy reports with different plugins, right? but this will basically tell you what was your feature file, what was your steps, scenarios, any examples, right? It will give all the information, whether it has passed or failed. Okay, so that's pretty much it. I wanted to discuss in this particular video. I wanted to show you how you can build a Cucumber framework with using your RestAssured to test or validate your RESTful APIs, right? Now, this was a very pretty basic example, but I hope this will help you to build your own framework where you can validate different API requests, right? So I hope you like this video. If you have any comments or any questions, please leave it in the comment section of this video and I will get back to you. So that's all for this video and see you in the next video. Until then, keep watching our channel and keep liking and keep sharing. Thanks.